If you're still doing this in 2026, you could be breaking the law without even realizing it. And the worst part? It was just banned nationwide by a 9-0 court ruling. No disagreement, no confusion, no exceptions. But here's what nobody is telling you. Millions of people are still doing it right now, thinking everything is normal. This isn't a small update. This isn't a technical change. This is a complete shutdown of something people relied on every single day. And it happened fast. Too fast for most people to notice. So, what exactly got banned? And why did every single judge agree? To understand that, we need to go back. For years, this thing existed in a gray area. Some places allowed it. Some tried to regulate it. Most ignored it completely. Because on the surface, it looked harmless. It was simple. It was convenient. It made life easier. And in today's world, that's enough for people to trust it. Businesses built entire systems around it. Apps integrated it. People used it daily without thinking twice. It became normal. Too normal. And that's where the problem started. Because when something becomes normal, people stop questioning it. Behind the scenes, issues were already forming. At first, they were small, hard to notice, easy to ignore. A few complaints here, a few strange outcomes there. Nothing major. But over time, those small issues started repeating. Patterns began to form. Experts started paying attention. And once they looked closer, they realized something was off. This wasn't random. Something deeper was wrong. And once that idea took hold, everything started moving fast. More reports came in, more people spoke up. And suddenly, this harmless system didn't look so harmless anymore. But here's the key detail most people missed. While the public saw small issues, investigators were uncovering something much bigger. They weren't just looking at outcomes, they were analyzing the structure itself. How it worked, why it worked, what happened when it failed. And what they found changed everything. Because this wasn't just a glitch, it wasn't just misuse. It was a flaw in the system itself. A flaw that couldn't be fixed easily. Think about that. This wasn't something you could patch with an update. It was built into the foundation. And once that became clear, the conversation shifted. It stopped being about convenience. It stopped being about innovation. It became about risk. Real risk. Because when something fails occasionally, that's one thing. But when failure is part of the design, that's something else entirely. And that's when things escalated. Cases started building. Not just one or two, dozens, then hundreds, and eventually, enough to trigger legal action. At first, it moved slowly. Lower courts reviewed the situation. Arguments were made. Some defended it. They said it was useful. They said it helped people. They said banning it would cause disruption. Others pushed back. They argued it was unsafe, misleading, unpredictable. But even then, no one expected what would happen next. Because the case didn't stay small. It kept moving up. Higher courts, more attention, more scrutiny. Until finally, it reached the highest level. And that's when everything changed. Because once a case reaches that level, it's no longer about individuals. It becomes about the entire system. The stakes become massive. Every detail is examined. Every risk is considered. And every possible outcome is weighed carefully. For months, arguments went back and forth. Technical explanations, real-world examples, expert opinions. Everything was put on the table. And then, something happened that shifted everything. A testimony. One case that stood out from the rest. It wasn't just technical. It was personal. It showed what happens when things go wrong in real life. At first, everything worked fine. No issues, no warning signs. Then small inconsistencies appeared. Nothing alarming. But they didn't stop. They grew. And slowly, they turned into something bigger, something uncontrollable. By the time the problem was fully understood, the damage was already done. That testimony changed the tone completely. It wasn't theoretical anymore. It was real. And it showed something dangerous, that anyone could be affected. Not just experts, not just edge cases. Anyone. And that realization made the decision unavoidable. Because at that point, it wasn't about whether it was useful. It was about whether it was safe. And the answer became clear. It wasn't. So when the ruling came out, there was no split. No disagreement. No debate. 9 judges, 1 decision. Ban it. Nationwide. Immediately. No transition period, no gradual phase out. Just stop. And overnight, everything changed. Systems shut down, features disappeared, services stopped working, and millions of people were left confused. Because for them, nothing had seemed wrong. One day it worked. The next day, it didn't. And here's where things get serious. Even after the ban, people didn't stop. Some didn't know. Some didn't understand. And some chose to ignore it. But the situation now is different. Before, there was uncertainty. Now, there isn't. The rule is clear. The line has been drawn, and crossing it has consequences. Real consequences. Not theoretical. Not future risks. Current risks. And enforcement? It's already starting. Quietly. But steadily. This isn't something that will stay hidden for long. Because once enforcement becomes visible, everything changes again. And that's what makes this moment critical. Most people are still in the dark. Still thinking things are the same. Still acting like nothing has changed. But it has. Completely. And the people who don't realize it? They're the ones most at risk. But here's the part that almost nobody is talking about. The ban itself is not the biggest story. There's something else. Something hidden inside the ruling. A detail that didn't make headlines, but could have an even bigger impact. Because depending on how it's interpreted, this ban might not stop here. It could expand. And if that happens, this situation becomes much bigger. Industries could be affected. Systems could change. Everyday tools could disappear. And most people won't see it coming. Because right now, it still looks like a single decision. But it might actually be the first step in something much larger. And once that next step happens, there's no going back. Because this isn't just a ban. It's a signal. A warning. A shift in how things will be handled moving forward. And in part 2, we're going to break down that hidden detail. What it really means. How it could affect you directly. And why some experts believe this is just the beginning. Because once you see what's coming next, you'll realize. So let's pick up right where we left off. A nationwide ban, a 9-0 ruling, something millions of people used, suddenly gone. But the real story starts after the decision. Because once the ruling was published, experts didn't just read the headline. They studied every word, every sentence, every definition, every line of legal language. And that's when they found it. The detail that changes everything. The wording wasn't limited. It didn't just describe one specific system. It described a type of system, a category. And that's where things get complicated. Because when a court defines a category, anything that fits inside it can fall under the same rule. Not just today, but in the future. That means this ban isn't locked to one thing. It can grow, expand, and reach areas nobody expected. That's why companies reacted so fast. Not publicly, but internally. Emergency meetings, legal reviews, policy changes, because suddenly they weren't sure if they were still safe. Something that seemed unrelated yesterday could now be risky. And when billions of dollars are on the line, no one waits to find out. So they started making changes. Quiet changes. Features removed without explanation. Options disappearing overnight. Updates pushed silently. Most users didn't notice. Everything still looked normal. But under the surface, things were shifting fast. This is what a ripple effect looks like. It doesn't hit all at once. It spreads. Slow at first, then faster. And then suddenly, everywhere. We are at the beginning of that process right now. And this is the moment where awareness matters most. Because once the second wave hits, it becomes obvious. But by then, it's already too late to react easily. So let's break this down clearly. Before the ruling, this system survived because of a gap. A space where rules weren't fully defined. That gap protected it. Allowed it to grow. Allowed people to use it without concern. But now, that gap is gone. And when that happens, everything built inside it becomes exposed. Imagine removing the ground under a structure. At first, it still stands. But cracks start forming. Then pressure builds. And eventually, it collapses. That's exactly what's happening now. Some systems are already failing. Others are holding, for now. But the pressure is building, and it's only a matter of time. Because enforcement is increasing. Not loudly, but consistently. Tracking usage, monitoring behavior, applying rules quietly. And this is where most people make a mistake. They assume, if it was serious, I'd hear about it everywhere. But real enforcement doesn't always start loud. It starts controlled, targeted, then expands. And by the time it becomes visible, it's already fully active. That's why this moment matters. Because right now, you still have time to understand, to adjust, to avoid problems before they reach you. But that window doesn't stay open forever. Now here's where things get even more serious. Some experts believe this ruling wasn't just reactive. They believe it was strategic, designed to set a precedent, a foundation for future decisions. Because once a precedent is set at this level, lower courts follow it, regulators use it, and new cases build on it. That means this isn't an isolated event. It's a starting point, a reference, a rule that can be applied again and again in different situations. And that's what makes this powerful, because now similar systems can be challenged more easily. More cases can be brought forward, more rulings can happen faster, and each one can expand the impact. That's how waves are created. First wave, the initial ban. Second wave, similar systems reviewed. Third wave, broader categories affected. And by the time it reaches that stage, the entire landscape changes. We are somewhere between the first and second wave right now. And signs of the second wave are already visible. More scrutiny, more caution, more quiet adjustments. Industries are watching closely. Some are preparing. Others are hoping it won't reach them. But hope isn't a strategy. Because the direction is clear. The system that existed before is being replaced. Slowly, but permanently. Now let's talk about you. Because all of this means nothing if it doesn't affect your daily life. And here's the reality. It probably does. Even if you don't realize it yet. Because this system was everywhere. Integrated into routines. Built into tools. Used without thinking. So even if you never paid attention to it, you were likely interacting with it. And that's what makes this dangerous. Not awareness. unawareness. Doing something without knowing the rules changed. That's where risk lives. Because now, the responsibility has shifted. Before, the system operated in uncertainty. Now, the rule is clear, which means responsibility moves to the user. And that's a big shift, because it removes excuses, removes confusion, removes the gray area. What's left is a clear line, and crossing it has consequences. Real consequences. Not hypothetical. Not rare. Enforced consequences. That's why adapting early matters. Not because of fear, but because of control. Knowing what's changed means you can respond. Ignore it, and you lose that control. Now here's the final piece most people overlook. Change like this doesn't reverse easily. Once a system is banned at this level, it rarely comes back the same way. Even if alternatives appear, they operate under stricter rules. More oversight, more limitations. Which means the freedom people had before is gone. And that's the real shift. Not just what was banned, but how things will work moving forward. Because from this point on, everything similar will be treated differently, more carefully, more strictly. And that changes the future, not just the present. So let's bring everything together. A system people trusted, a flaw hidden inside it, growing concerns, a case that reached the highest level, a unanimous 9-0 decision, a nationwide ban, immediate impact, hidden language allowing expansion, a ripple effect already in motion, and future waves likely coming. This is not a small change. This is a turning point. A moment where the rules shifted. And once rules shift, everything built on the old ones must adjust. Some will adapt quickly, some will struggle, and some will ignore it until it catches up to them. The difference comes down to awareness, understanding what changed, understanding what it means, and acting before it becomes a problem. Because once enforcement becomes visible, it's no longer about preparation. It's about consequences. And by then, options are limited. So the real question is simple. Are you going to stay ahead of this change or react after it affects you? Because the shift has already started, and it's not slowing down. If you want to stay informed, make sure you subscribe. Because changes like this don't happen once. They come in waves, and the next one is already forming. Also, check the next video on your screen. It connects directly to this, and what's coming next might be even bigger. Stay aware, stay informed, because now you know what most people don't.